The following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com. This
Before we get to our two wonderful guests today, in Viewpoint fashion, I'd like to kind of do one more plea out for the Humane Society. They are looking for volunteers. Volunteers are very needy, special individuals, or not needy, I should say, but you are needed. The Humane Society does need help. If you would like to help out and volunteer there, contact them at 217-737-4042. They are located there at 1801 North Lincoln Parkway from 10 a.m. to 2 o'clock Tuesday through Saturdays. Moving over to our two wonderful guests that are here today. Like I always say in Viewpoint fashion, the Lord and weather willing, you guys made it here. So, folks, if you want to call in, ask your questions, concerns, your kudoses here to Chris Graue, Graue Chevrolet, Patrick Doolin, Mr. Tesla man himself, I guess we can call him.
No.
Please call in at 217-648-5510. First of all, I will admit I do not know much about EVs, electric vehicles, so I guess I can start out this way. A hybrid. What is that considered, a hybrid car? Because I drove my first one this summer, so.
Hybrid's got two power sources.
Okay.
Good morning, Lincoln and Logan County. This is Chris Graue from Graue Chevrolet Buick in Lincoln.
So are they considered an electric vehicle then, or?
Well,
I know it's called hybrid, but.
There's two different ways that they'll operate. They're gas then electric or electric then gas. My wife's Volt is electric first with a gas powered backup. Now a Prius hybrid is gas first, electric second, where it recharges the battery and only uses the electricity under certain conditions to propel the vehicle forward, but most of the time it's running on you still have to put gas in it. My wife's car, you still put gas in it, but the Volt is unique where it's electricity first, gas second. And the biggest difference with that vehicle is it's a very small battery compared to the batteries that we have in the vehicles today. It's a 16 kilowatt battery, which it only runs it for about 30, 40 miles, and then it switches over to the gas engine. Now, the vehicles today, like the Bolt, has a 60 kilowatt battery, 56 kilowatt battery. The Blazer that we just started selling has a 100 kilowatt battery, and then the batteries are coming like in the full-size pickup truck, the Hummer EV1, 200 kilowatt battery, so it's a really, really big power source.
So the Volt, mentioning that your wife has, does she have to charge that, or does it
She charges
itself?
It has regenerative braking, where under certain conditions, when you apply the brakes, it will charge the battery, but not enough to make it so that you wouldn't have to. We have a charger in our garage at home. She charges at home. My wife just retired back in July when she was working in Springfield at Memorial. She'd charge at home, drive to the hospital, charge at the hospital, drive back home, never burn a drop of fuel.
Really?
Yep. When the concept of the Volt came up, they wanted to make it a commuter vehicle, and I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's like 65 or 70% of Americans have a daily commute of 40 miles or less. So you really don't need to have a great big battery to do an electric drive back and forth. So they thought, well, let's start with a smaller battery, 16 kilowatt, easier to charge, less weight. We'll have a gas backup in the car to let the car go, so under conditions when you needed to go farther, if she needs to hop in and drive to see our daughter in Indianapolis or go to Milwaukee to go visit our son, she can just hop right in the car and drive the 30 miles. Automatically it switches over to gas and she just drives gas engine. But most of the time, short distance, she's driving pure electric.
Now, are those miles per gallon pretty good then on those Volts when it does switch over to gas then, or?
The first Volt she had we had almost 100,000 miles on our 12 when we traded it. She was 115 miles to the gallon. In
Wow.
her current car, in her current Volt, she's 145 miles to the gallon.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you do the math
Patrick, are you
on
doing that
that.
with your Tesla? Like, folks, we're going to have a Tesla GM here thing going on, maybe, but not. But what are you seeing then for your, or can we see that, or how do you equate that?
There are no
for
miles
Tesla?
per
Gallon.
gallon
Okay.
on the Tesla. Yeah, the car is rated for full charge, 275 miles, depending on speed and everything, just like you would in a gas vehicle. That'll degrade down to probably, if you're running 70 miles an hour, probably get 220, 225 miles off of it before you recharge.
So mentioning your Tesla, and folks, I don't know if you've seen it, I've posted pictures on social media, we do have, technically, as you can say, 3 charging stations in Lincoln, or 3 places to charge. There's one there at Quality Inn. If you're sitting at the drive-thru there at Wendy's, you kind of look over to your right and you can see it. And then one there at Examus, but those are 2 types that are what, a level 2?
Level 2.
Charging.
That's 240 volts.
So kind of like the medium speed of charging. But then you put in, I call it a 3, but that's wrong, like
It's
a super fast, a DC.
It's a DC fast charger, and it's
Yeah.
480 volts.
So super fast.
And it'll charge 120 kilowatts. It's rated at 120 kilowatts per hour. It's rare that you would ever get a full 120 because of the conditions, state of charge of the battery, temperature outside, whether the battery's been preconditioned, how far you're going to charge the battery, because of the regenerative braking. I didn't understand this until about 6 months ago, but one of the reasons why you only charge an EV battery to 80% so that you can capture that regenerative braking as you're driving. If you charge it all the way to 100, the regenerative braking will not allow you to put energy back into the battery. Plus, it saves the battery. It's a little more gentle on the battery as you're charging. That last 20%, you really have to cram that electricity in, and the car communicates with the charger communicates with the car on how much state of charge the car has and how many kilowatts to put in.
So when they're charging, is there a screen that shows the battery is at this, so the person knows when to unhook it? Because I don't know, so excuse my ignorance, I guess you could say, by these questions, because I don't know.
Car does it automatically, and I've been surprised that we've had a lot of people that will pull off the interstate, and let's say they're coming from Chicago and they need to get to Springfield, but they can only get to Lincoln or Bloomington. They'll come in and get 15% charge. Just enough, and the car will tell them you need to get to your destination, you need 12 kilowatts of power to get to Springfield, Chatham, wherever. If their ultimate destination is there, instead of sitting for 45 minutes or an hour cramming all that extra power in, they'll just come in and get, kind of like in NASCAR, just a splash of gas to get to the finish line. They'll do that with the electricity, with the power, and they can terminate the charge at any time. There's a button on the screen on the charger to terminate the charge. You can also terminate it through the charge screen in the car. And people have learned that, and especially too, if they're going to a relative's house that has a charger they can plug in for free, they don't have to pay us 38 cents a kilowatt hour to charge, but we're also delivering that very, very quickly, where when they're going, it's probably going to be a much, much slower state, a much slower rate of charge.
The interesting thing of these cars, so many people talk about the mechanics, the battery, and all that good stuff. The most understated component of these vehicles is the software that's in them, that drives them, and the software that's behind the screens, that understands the charging, that the automation behind that in the navigation to tell you how far you're going, how far you have to your next charge, how long you need to be at that charging station to get either to the next stop or to your destination. The cars do all of that for you.
You and I visited. Tell us about, you took a trip with your Tesla, didn't you?
I've taken many
trips, but what I'm referring to is there was one
long distance. Yep.
Long distance. There was one out west. You said it kind of maps out of here's this next station, and
yeah. So it just I can punch in, drive to my daughter's place in Seattle, Washington, and it'll tell you the most economic path to take with all your charging stops along the way, how long you have to stop and charge for each one. So you don't have to think about it. As you get closer to the charging stations, it starts preparing the battery so that it charges faster. the biggest fear anyone has is that I end up stranded somewhere without a charge. And at least
that would be my fear.
On the charging network is massive out there, and
and it's getting better.
There are apps like PlugShare that will show you where they all are. Tesla's vehicles show them where the Tesla ones are. They will show you where the non-Tesla ones are. So it's amazing, really, how many are out there, but that's not common knowledge if you haven't had to think about it before. So that's a concern people have. Worst case scenario, at least for my car, if I run out of a charge on the app, I can request roadside emergency charge. They send somebody out, give me just enough to get to the next charging station.
So to kind of compare it, or for people, in simple terms, you have your Android phones and your iPhones. And so the plugins are somewhat different, obviously, to charge. Is that the same case or not the same case when it comes to a Tesla charging station compared to, say, if you wanted to go over to Chris's, Patrick, and charge, do you have to have an adapter or not? Or let's say he's got a Volt and he wants to go charge at Shields. Shields has, the Tesla charging stations there. Do you have to have an adapter for that, Chevy Volt to go to a Tesla? So
I'll take that one.
Yeah, so for my car, I will have had it 5 years in March. So they're working to standardize the adapters across the industry. Mine's early enough that if I go to Chris, I probably have to have the adapter. And so mine actually came with, when I got it, an adapter to use a non-Tesla charger. So there's a lot of standardization going on to try to make them more universal. So as last year, non-Tesla vehicles can now charge at Tesla charging stations. And so I don't know whether they need an adapter, kind of depends on the vehicle. He may be able to speak to that from the GM side of things, but it's the one non-Tesla charger that I stopped at one time just to kind of, for curiosity. They had a variety of options, and there was one for Tesla there that you could just use that particular charger with the adapter. So I don't think it's really much that people have to be concerned about, especially as every year goes by, they're just getting better and better with that.
Every charging station, like when you look up on Google Maps, Apple Maps, PlugShare, all of them show what connectors we have. Each different station may have a different connector. There are basically 3 different connectors in the U.S. There's a J1772 that's around level 2. It's the same connector that's on a DC fast charger, but with the DC fast charger, there's 2 additional lugs at the bottom, like what the new GM vehicles have. That allows the current to flow much faster through the 2 lugs that are on the bottom. The NACS, which is the North America Charging Standard, is what the Tesla has, and the CCS, which is the DC fast charge that GM has now, will be changing to NACS at some point. In 2025, they're supposed to switch over to those. I was not thrilled when I heard that they were changing that, because we had just bought all these chargers. Now all of a sudden our chargers are going to have adapters on them or change the cords, but in the grand scheme of things, it's the right thing to do. I was not happy because we just made this investment in all these chargers. Not that they're obsolete, but we're going to have adapters or change cords, and probably what we're going to do, our big charger has got 2 cords on it, so 2 different vehicles can charge at one time. I've asked the company if we can switch one of the cords to an NACS, because right now, a majority of the vehicles that come in and charge are Teslas, and they have to use an adapter to plug in with that DC fast charge. The GM vehicles eventually are going to be the NACS, so let's put an NACS cord on it now, then we can charge a Tesla vehicle without an adapter, and then we'll be able to charge both of them.
There you go.
So we have an adapter inside the store, and that charger is available 24/7, so if a Tesla comes in at 8 o'clock at night and they don't have an adapter, we can't charge them unless they have an adapter to either fit the CCS, which is the big DC fast charger, or the J1772, which is the level 2 smaller charger.
So speaking of, you got people coming in, obviously your charging station is a 24-hour station. Obviously some people, you don't have to have somebody there manning it. How many folks, when did it go live, I guess you could say?
November 6th.
November 6th. So from possibly November 6th to now, don't put you on the spot, how many have you seen charges or people coming in and charging?
I just looked at that number before we left, and it's actually larger than what I thought. And there's a little bit, I can't say, there's probably some sessions in there that shouldn't be counted. 186 is what we've charged so far, and that's in 65 days. I would have guessed, if you would have asked me, how many have you charged, I would say 5 a week. It's not every day. Sometimes we'll have 2. On the weekends, it seems like Saturdays and Sunday we'll see more. I get an email to my phone that tells me that one of the chargers has been activated. Then I can go on to my tablet at home and see through our security cameras who's charging. But it's actually the number that really surprised me. We've dispensed 1.6 megawatts of power through that charging station. And that's just the level 2, or the DC fast charger. That doesn't include the level 2 that we're using as well.
Wow.
That's on a separate platform. Of course, these platforms couldn't be combined. We couldn't manage these chargers on one app on our phones. No. We have to have everything separate. But it all works well so far.
So Atlanta has a charging station.
Theirs is a level 2.
So there's a level
Yep.
2. So you are truly the only one in Logan County that's got the fast charge, like you said, the Indianapolis pit stop, fuel and go, and for everybody. And
the size of the charger allows the system to charge more quickly. Our big charger, if the vehicle will accept it, the max it'll charge at is 120 kilowatts. The level 2 charger, the J1772, that's not a DC fast charger, will charge at 19.2 kilowatts. We have another charger inside that's smaller yet, that's between 7 and 8 kilowatts. So the size of the charger tells or allows how much to flow, but then the vehicle also has to allow that much to flow. And the only vehicle that GM builds right now that will take a 19.2 kilowatt level 2 charge is the big,
is it the Hummer?
The Hummer,
Okay.
the Sierra full-size pickup truck, and the Silverado. It's a 200 kilowatt battery, which is massive. It's huge. It's really, really big. Just imagine how long that'd take to charge level 1 at home.
To give a little perspective.
Take you 2 weeks probably.
Yeah. So I have a level 2 charger at our office, and if I'm down to 10-15% battery left when I pull in, I plug it in the morning. By noon, when I go out for lunch, to leave for lunch, it's charged up to 80%. If I'm on a road trip, that same charge will take maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30, depends. Usually times out about a good restroom break / food stop. And that's the difference between the fast charging and the level 2 chargers. So, because when you're on the go, you don't want to stop for 3-4 hours and charge, and that's a lot of some of the misconception that's out there. Rarely when I stop, do I have to wait around much for the vehicle, because these fast chargers, they're so quick, and they're just getting faster and faster as time goes by. And that's the key, is come in, quick stop, quick charge. And again, you don't have to charge the full amount. It's just enough to get to the next stop or wherever you're going.
So I guess we can say a kudos to Logan County, Chris, because when you built this station, you got some pieces to build it, or whatever you call it, from Eaton, correct? Here from
Yeah, all the electrical components that we could get, we wanted to have Eaton. There's the big CT box that makes the connection from the transformers on the pole to our power distribution panels. Everything's Eaton. And the level 2 charger that's on the station's Eaton. The level 2 charger in our service write-up area is an Eaton charger that was made right here in Lincoln, Illinois. That makes me really happy. Man, when we went out and I asked them if they could ship the components to the Lincoln plant instead of shipping them directly to us. They said yes. We had purchased 2, and they gave us the charger, the extra charger that they made in Lincoln.
Neat. neat.
kind of a gift. It was really neat because we got to go through, we picked up the stuff, picked up the items, we got a tour, we got to see the line where they're actually making the chargers, where that charger that's in our service write-up area was made. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. It's not in... Your level 2 is a 40 amp, I believe.
48 amp.
This one's a 30. The one that's in that the techs use in the shop and the one that's on the charging island is an 80 amp. It's a 19.2 kilowatts, the biggest level 2 that they make, or that's available.
So if I'm coming in and saying, Chris, I like the Blazer, which, by the way, I do. It's pretty recent. I looked at it the other night. So anyway, but what do I need it at our house? Do I need a 110, or do I need to put
You need to put a level 2 in.
a level 2 in?
Anybody that's going to buy an EV needs to have the ability to be able to charge on their own, to try to survive on DC fast charging. It's not terribly economical. You can get it cheaper. Our DC fast charger we charge much less than what the national average is. But anybody that's going to do that, it'd be like having your phone and using public charging for your phone every day. That doesn't work. What do? You take your phone home at night, you plug it in your bedstand, you get up the next morning, it's completely charged. Same thing with your EV. You're going to park in your garage, plug it in, the next morning it's completely charged. And
So
then
the layman terms for that, what you need in your garage, you need a dryer outlet,
Okay.
like an electric dryer outlet. With a 50 amp breaker on
So
it.
people are thinking, oh my gosh, I got to build this elaborate conglomerate and everything.
The one that I have in my garage, I installed myself.
so NEMA 1450 plug is the term that you want to tell your electrician.
Yep, exactly. I was going to say that.
Well, I'll just have Patrick come over and put it in.
No. But I just ran the wire. I plugged it up. I put in a 50 amp breaker, and away I went. So the key to that.
Too special, then basically.
Nothing specialized for that at all. And you didn't have, the most expensive thing was the 50 feet of copper wire I had to buy, and the plug was standard. And it literally is just like mine anyway, is just like a clothes dryer plug-in.
There's been some concerns raised by some different people I've talked to about whether the infrastructure or the power grid is ready for EVs. It's ready. They've spent with the infrastructure improvements that they've made just over the last couple of years. It's going to be ready, and it's ready now. And most of the EV charging is going to happen overnight, off-peak hours, where most utilities will allow you a discount if you'll have a rate from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night when most of the air conditioners and things are running, when they can charge more. And then if you charge off-peak from 6 o'clock in the evening till 8 o'clock in the morning, they'll maybe give you a 5-cent discount on your utility bill. Now, locally, we don't have a variable rate like that, but most of the off-peak charging is going to happen overnight when the electrical grid is somewhat dormant, not being used near as much.
Question?
And most of the software manages the charging, so it'll start off-peak.
So we do have a question?
Yep.
Oh, there's... Okay.
Hello? These and these?
Yeah. State-of-the-art.
State-of-the-art headphones, yes. Hi, go ahead, caller.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. What does the batteries cost for replacement when they go bad, and how long do they last?
Well, there's an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on all the new GM vehicles, and they can't really attest to what, like the Tesla battery to replace. And the good thing that they've done with the new GM vehicles, one of the things that they did with the Ultium platform, it's unlikely that you'll ever have to replace the battery in its entirety, because everything is somewhat compartmentalized, where they have a series of cells that then have pouches inside. So instead of having to replace the entire battery, the technician can diagnose that there is a problem with pouch number 13 and cell number 6. So instead of having to replace the entire battery, they can replace just the cell that is bad instead of the whole thing. There's been some unkind news stories about the cost of EV batteries and how much they are. Unfortunately, the number that people have seen is on an early EV where it's a very low volume, very expensive part. And just like think of what a big screen TV cost when they first came out 30 years ago. Could anybody afford that? No, you couldn't afford it. Now, what can you buy that same big screen TV for?
Well, $100 to $200, $300. I mean, it's dropped quite a bit.
You know, the big thing that we've seen with preparing for GM's EV program was getting our technicians ready and having the techs properly trained so that they can work on these elaborate technological wonders that come rolling in the service department. And we've got the technology, we've got the test equipment, and we've got the personnel trained to be able to fix these. So it's pretty unlikely, and I can't say never, but it's pretty unlikely that we'd ever have to replace a battery in its entirety.
Mm-hmm. I wonder where the patches in the battery that you can diagnose where the problem is, and are those pouches under warranty?
Yes. 8 years, 100,000 miles, and I can't tell you what the pouch costs because it's somewhat immaterial at this point because it's all under warranty. We could find that out, and I'm sure it's probably not terribly expensive because there's so many of these pouches, but GM's taken an approach that eliminates that entire battery replacement, that I'm sure Tesla has the same technology that GM does. They've really changed their approach with this thing. Do you have another question?
So is the technology there for say you have a gas engine, which I have now. If you put one of these, are they making the batteries for gas vehicles that have the pouches in them?
Well, I think what you're referring to, can you convert an ICE vehicle, which is an internal combustion engine, to an EV? Right. They do have kits to do that, but they're not cost effective. You'd be better off just driving your ICE vehicle until it wears out. And then, if you elect to continue to drive or want to drive an internal combustion engine vehicle, you're going to be able to do that for a long, long time. The early adopters and people that want to drive an EV have that option at this point, but if you want to stay with an ICE vehicle, you're going to have options for that for a long time.
Yes. Okay, well, I thank you very much.
Any other questions, don't hesitate to give me a call at the store.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for calling in. So, Patrick, you said you're on how many years have you had your EV, your Tesla now?
It'll be 5 years in March.
5 years. So, yeah.
And I still love it. I think when people ask me, do you still like your car or whatever, I really enjoy it because it continually evolves. I get software updates and get new features in the car. But it's a fun vehicle to drive. I haven't had any issues with it. Tesla's got a warranty, much like GM, on the battery, so I don't worry about that if something goes wrong with the battery. What I'm more worried about at this point is, getting in an accident like anyone else would, and then waiting in line to get your vehicle repaired. So, but as far as the functionality, it's still very solid.
So the Blazer, I think you said, Chris, you and your son, you guys went to Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. Whereabouts did you fuel up? How was that trip? Miles per gallon, pretty comparable to the ICE Blazers too?
Yeah, you really can't do the miles per gallon comparison. Right. We left Lincoln with a full state of charge and drove. I had to stop at the racetrack first, and then we went up to our daughter's up in Broad Ripple, and we found a level 2 charger up, and Broad Ripple's about 15 miles north of the racetrack. And when we got to the charging station up there, we had 14% charge left. So we had driven 205 miles, I think. Mm-hmm. So we left it there, charged it, stayed at her apartment, then we went and picked the car up the next morning, drove it to the track for training, and then drove it straight home. By the time I got back to Lincoln, I had 10% of charge left. For some reason, around Indianapolis, there are very, very few DC fast chargers.
Really?
We were able to find this level 2 charger that was no charge, 0. So we charged in Lincoln.
Wow.
It cost me for 200 miles of range or 250 miles of range. It was at retail. It would have been 100 kilowatt charge at 38 cents a kilowatt hour is $38. So figuratively, we drove back and forth to Indianapolis on less than $40.
Less than $40.
That's pretty reasonable.
That is very reasonable. So compared to, I shouldn't say California, but it seems like a lot of things are starting in California. Are we pretty reasonable here in Illinois rates?
Yes.
Illinois has some of the lowest electricity rates around. There are places that, at 38 cents you go, and it's $1, it can be more. Each charging station has, typically, I can't speak for Chris's per se, but they have their rates published, so you can see what their rate is. And then, you make that determination just like you would which gas station you want to go to.
Yeah.
The national average that I did a lot of research before we posted our rates, and the default rate that was on our charger when it arrived was 45 cents. Now, you look at California, I think somewhere up around the Northwest, New York City, these bigger metropolitan areas, they're pushing 75 cents a kilowatt hour, $1.25 per kilowatt hour. We wanted to be just below the national average, and that's less than what we're charging, more than what our rate is. And we have to, because the investment that we made to put that charging station out there, but we wanted to be lower than what the national average is, and I wanted to be lower than what Springfield is, lower than what Bloomington is. So if somebody's driving through, well, Lincoln's got a 120 kilowatt DC fast charger, they're only charging 38 cents a kilowatt hour. Let's stop there.
Now,
and so far it has worked.
Look at the app, and forgive me before we went on the radio, on the air. What's Springfield and Bloomington roundabout like last week, or did you look charge? What's their rates compared then?
I think they're 45.
About 45. That's what I was thinking they were a few weeks ago.
I think there's one Electrify America that may be closer to 50 cents an hour, but 45 cents.
Wow.
And I don't know what Examus's rate is. I don't know what they charge at the hotel.
Yeah.
And and these people that expect to charge for free, I had a guy that was in transit mentioned to me that he was shocked that we were charging for electricity. So, well, can I come plug my EV in at your house? And he paused for a long time and said, well, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, if you're buying a nice vehicle, you don't have, a gas station out there, a Phillips 66, or,
Yeah.
an Amoco, and saying you get free gas or free diesel fuel. So, it's same thing.
There are some hotels that will provide charging with no extra cost, but that's usually if you're valet parking or something else, and it's just a different level of service, but it's pretty rare that you find anywhere for
What's
free.
the Tesla rate then there at Shields? I don't want to pick on Shields, but when you go to Shields, you see the station there.
I don't even know. I could look it up, but
His deal's a little bit different where I think with Tesla, correct me if I'm wrong, you purchase that through Tesla. So you don't go to the Tesla charger and scan a credit card.
Really?
You do it through the app.
Tesla charger, you plug in.
And it reads
It knows your car, and you've got a card on file, credit card on file, and it'll charge it to that card. There are different programs that Tesla has where you get, like right now, I think I have 2,000 miles of charging free to me through one of their superchargers as part of a promo thing. So they can control that kind of stuff when they own the charger. But it's pretty common they're in that 30 to 40 cent range when I have paid. There are other things that keep in mind with these EV chargers. When you pull up to them, you can't park and leave it at an EV charger overnight. Right? They'll start charging you idle time.
We have the ability to be able to put a dormant time charge on our charger. I haven't yet.
And so that's, usually, I can't speak for the GM side, but for mine, if I'm going off to eat dinner or whatever and it's charging, it will send me a text letting me know, or notification, hey, it's almost close. Don't forget there are idle time charges or whatever.
So can you turn it off then and it stops charging? Or do you
It'll
have to
stop.
or do you have to go out and unplug it? or-
It'll stop charging automatically.
Okay.
They don't want you taking up the spot.
Right.
If
So
they're
come move the
if they're
car to
busy.
somebody else.
And most of these charging stations, they publish a number of spots they have and how many are available. So as you're driving, you're like, okay, I'm going to stop here. There are 8 charging spots and 6 are available. Well, then you know that, okay, there's room for me, right?
Kind of wish we had that at gas stations, you pull in.
We have
and-
that at ours where you can look at, especially on the Eaton chargers, if somebody wants to use our level 2 outside, they can pull it up on this app called Charge Lab and be able to see whether or not it's available, whether or not it's being used, when the last time it was used.
Neat.
So that software side of thing, that adds a convenience factor that we often, it's new, right, to the EV market, and there's a continuous amount of this that is new that we just haven't had to think about before. And so that learning curve is something that, hopefully we're able to shed a little light on here today.
Is the maintenance pretty good on these vehicles? Then getting better and better, obviously? Or is it low maintenance on an EV?
The cars still need to have maintenance done, but it's so much less than an ICE vehicle. I'm still a big fan of internal combustion engines. It's fascinating. My wife thinks I'm kind of a geek when I start talking about some of the different things, but all the things that happen underneath the hood of a car in an ICE vehicle is just amazing to me. But with that, there are so many different things that happen that require maintenance. The mere fact that you're putting gas in the vehicle and that transfer of that fuel from the fuel tank to the engine, all those different things that happen with varnishing of injectors and fuel pressure regulators and sending units, all of that stuff requires maintenance. And I can't remember what the exact number is, but there's, in an internal combustion engine, it goes from, internal combustion to EV goes from 360 moving parts down to like 15. So there's so many fewer things that happen in an EV that require maintenance, but there are still things that need to be done. There's still brakes that need to be replaced. There's still tires that need to be replaced. Still needs to have alignment done, cabin air filters, different things like that.
But the maintenance is just basically
Much less.
Much less.
Especially oil
Nice.
changes.
Yeah.
There's no oil, there's no fluid, there's no transmission fluid, there's no transmission in a
There
true
is still
EV.
there is still coolant. It's not engine coolant, but there's still coolant that has to be tended to, flushed, maintained. They have a pretty elaborate system to maintain the ideal temperature in the battery so that the battery stays at the right state to
Does that
put
go
out.
by like in hours, so on how often you have to do that?
I
Or
think
how
it's
does
in
it,
miles, just like in a
or is
GM,
miles? I
just
wasn't
like in a
sure.
nice
So, yeah.
vehicle.
what is the mileage then that you need to, I don't mean to put you on the
Probably
spot. so-
60,000 miles, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Compared to the ICE vehicles where you've got, we're at 3,000 miles and we better be getting an oil changed.
Yeah.
Because of the exposure, because the amount of maintenance that has to be done on an ICE vehicle, obviously, being in business, having a service department with all the employees that we have, that's going to have an effect on our business that less vehicles in, less maintenance is going to be less traffic through our service department. What we're hoping is, or thinking is, we'll see those vehicles more frequently for less things, so our penetration is going to be higher. At least that's the thought that GM has told us to go on. I guess I drank the
We
Kool-Aid
made,
on that one.
we made a better vehicle. It's all good. So,
Yeah.
neat. Is that about the same thing with you, Patrick, with your Tesla?
Yeah, I've had it 5 years, changed the filters in the cabin, for the air quality. I did have an alignment done once. And I had a scratch fixed. That was my fault.
One of the things that I've been told by a couple different EV people that tires and alignments are going to be really important because of the weight of the vehicle. These vehicles are heavy because of the size of the battery, and the weight is evenly distributed throughout. So instead of, in an ICE vehicle, a front-wheel drive vehicle, most of the time front tires wear out faster because those are the drive tires. Those are the tires that have got most of the powertrain weight across the front. So the fronts wear out. That's why you rotate. With a EV vehicle, it's more evenly distributed, but because of the overall weight of the vehicle, it's going to wear tires more quickly. And they put a harder compound tire on the vehicles to get better less rolling resistance to give you more miles per kilowatt. So the vehicles have harder tires that will wear more quickly.
The Blazer, that's the EV that you have there at the store. Is that 4-wheel drive or does it come?
It's all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive. Do they come in a?
You can get them.
all-wheel
You can
drive?
get them just front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. That affects the overall range of the vehicle because you've got 2 more drive motors.
Okay.
So it's more power, just like in an ICE vehicle that's all-wheel drive. You're driving all 4 wheels, so it's going to get less miles per gallon because you have more mechanical
Right.
things to drive, more weight.
Is yours front-wheel drive then, Pat?
All-wheel drive.
Oh, you have an all-wheel drive. Okay. All righty.
There's some of the things that people, if they've not ridden in a true EV, and they get in, the first thing they realize or notice is how quiet they are, because there's no sound of a motor running or anything. They don't shift, so there's no jerking or anything with the shifting, although that's very smooth these days. And they're quick because it's just instant torque. So those are kind of the fun things about it. I was shocked when the first time I drove one and how fast it was. So that's the fun factor, right? The practical factor is that I rarely go to a gas station when I'm driving my vehicle to and from work, and I take it on trips, and then when I get into my wife's vehicle, then she's like, okay, don't forget how to drive this regular vehicle now, where you actually have to push on the brake, you have to steer, you have to do all these other things, because the technology advancement that we see in the EVs just kind of does all that stuff for you. And that goes back to kind of the software brain that they're putting into them more so than the mechanical brain. And when I pull up to my garage, it automatically opens the door, and when I back out of my garage, it automatically closes the door. It knows where I am, location to that. I don't have to push the button for the door to open and close. Okay, it's cool. Well, it locks automatically when you walk away. Some of the stuff is common with other vehicles.
I know what you're talking about. So you even said, though, too, if your vehicle was stolen, you can track
so
it.
I can open up the app and see exactly where it is, where it's going down the road, how fast it's going, and I can limit the speed and all that. But that level of technology is advancing quickly, and everyone talks about the self-driving capabilities. It's really cool. It's fun to play with. I use it when I'm on the highway because it's safer than I am, but there isn't this way to let them just completely drive themselves. If, in fact, the way my car is, if I have it in self-driving mode on the interstate and I pick up my phone and I'm looking at my phone, it'll beep at me and tell me to pay attention because it's sensing what's going on, where your eyes are and everything. You can't let go of the steering wheel more than a few minutes or it'll remind you of that. If you totally ignore all those warnings, it's giving you visual and audio alerts. It turns on the hazard lights, pulls over the side of the road and shuts down.
Really?
If you do that too many times, then the car will not let you use full self-driving for a period of time. It almost puts you in self-driving timeout. Right? So, for those that want that level of capability, there are rules that you have to follow with it, just like everything else. So, but it's just the biggest thing with them is the convenience factor when you're going to and fro, and you just the cost is so much less. Speaking of cost, people think EVs are very expensive. Like I thought, when I first got my car, people thought I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this
Because
Tesla.
that's what I was telling them.
Okay, that's probably what it came from. And I said, well, I'm like one of those GM cars. And my car, when I got it, was $67,000, and you can get into EVs for similar money. I mean, than you can a regular vehicle. The prices are coming down because there's more of them in the market. There's more competition. I know Tesla shares a lot of their technology with other EV makers because, like, for their new Cybertruck they're coming out with, they developed and patented or trademarked or whatever, I don't know how that worked, the 48-volt wiring system. And it reduced the amount of copper needed for the vehicle by 75%. They shared that with the other major automakers because of the value it is to the EV market and the impact it makes to the economy and environment when you don't have to use that much. It reduces weight, therefore you can have more battery, reduces the weight of the copper wiring anyway. So it's a competitive market, but there's a lot of collaboration going on out there to help make the process better and more affordable for everyone.
You mentioned trucks, so do you have the new Chevy trucks? Are they 3/4 tons or are they
half ton?
They're half tons. Are they? Will they make a 3/4 ton? You think?
Eventually, but it's going to be a long time. Half-ton Silverado or the Silverado EV was supposed to come out in 2024. They've pushed it back to 2025. They want to make sure it's right when it comes out, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. We'll get the Equinox next. They're going to start production on those in about 2 weeks. We've got orders in for them right now. That'll be a much lower priced EV. They'll be able to get into one of those for about $35. The Blazer's around $60. Mm-hmm. The full-size pickup truck is.
See, Patrick, there you go. You can go trade off your Tesla.
You're right.
You can get a Bolt for around $25 after the tax credits and everything. Something else I wanted to mention that the regenerative braking and how that works. I hadn't driven. I knew that it was there, but I hadn't been accustomed to it until the Blazer came out, the one-pedal driving that's available in these vehicles where you can drive it without the brake.
Oh.
You only use the accelerator pedal, which it's kind of hard to get used to at first, where the systems, they'll take the electric motor and they'll flip it from an electric motor to an AC generator. So as the vehicle's slowing down, instead of it being a motor, it'll generate AC electricity to replenish the battery. Kind of like the Prius or kind of like the regenerative braking on the other models. It's not enough to charge it enough where you don't have to charge the vehicle, but it'll supplement that so that instead of when you brake in a regular vehicle, in an ICE vehicle, you have to dissipate that forward motion through the brake rotors by squeezing those brake rotors to slow the vehicle down. They dissipate that forward motion through running an AC generator, flip the motor from a motor to a generator to generate electricity to put it back in the battery.
Rarely use the brakes on my car.
Really?
And the best story I have on the regen was I was at a charging station and talking to this guy. He had Tesla's families in the car, and so I asked him, and I hadn't been on a big trip yet, and I asked him where he's going. He was going from Colorado to Tennessee. And he said that it was so cool because he left where they were at in Colorado with full charge, drove up the mountain and back down the other side, and he more or less had about the same amount of charge when he started because he consumed energy going up and then regenerated coming back. And he said that was mind-blowing to him. So it doesn't fully replace, as he indicated, the need to charge, but it helps, and it helps extend the range that you can get.
Kind of like driving a golf cart. And it's kind of an odd sensation when you're driving that you push on the foot feed. It's not a gas pedal anymore. You push on the foot feed to accelerate, but then as you approach a stop, you just easily let up. And as you're letting up, you're essentially applying the brake. You're not really applying the brake in a general sense where you're dissipating that energy through the brake calipers, but you're letting up and essentially applying the brake through the motor, switching from a motor to an AC generator. The technology that's in these today is just, it's unbelievable.
Cars automatically put the brake lights on when that happens without you hitting the brake pedal.
Wow.
Again, the technology there is great.
That is neat. That's neat. Well, since we don't have any other callers, you have any questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask about maintenance on EV vehicles, but someone stole my question. So, since we're in winter here, I was going to ask, you talked about the harder tires, you talked about the, not a front-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive. How do these types of vehicles handle on, icy roads or winter conditions? Do we know that yet?
I haven't driven one in icy conditions yet. Patrick's had his for 5 years. He can probably attest to that.
Yeah, that's you can turn that regenerative braking down so that you have more control in those slippery conditions. The vehicles are heavy, so that adds weight. It gets around far better than what I expected it to in the snow and such. But just like in my vehicle, I cannot spin the tires. It will not allow me to punch the accelerator and spin the tires. It controls all of that. So likewise, when you're in snowy conditions, it's going to keep that from happening, but you can still slide on ice just like any other vehicle.
Yeah.
With the weight distribution and how big those batteries are, the batteries in some of these vehicles, they're as big as this desktop, probably about that thick.
Really?
And they're all across the bottom of the vehicle, so it distributes the weight and low center of gravity. They're hard to flip over, all that because of those.
We had to buy a special forklift to move the batteries in the unlikely event. We have this enormous battery fixture, and that's all part of the program to become EV compliant with General Motors. The forklift was not on the top of my priority list, but we use it probably 3-4 times a week now, and the guys in parts just love having it. There's different occurrences that we'll need it for unloading stuff that we didn't have before. It's pretty handy.
So you've really invested a lot into the dealership to become, I don't want to say EV compliant,
ready.
Or EV ready, basically. So I say compliant's not the word, but I mean you're ready, you're prepared for.
The charging station that we put in, at first we looked at putting it up against the building, and we had to have 483 phase power to run that. We currently have 208 3-phase in the building. So we were going to have to, if we put it up against the building, they were going to have to put new service to the dealership, a different transformer outside, a step-up transformer inside. They're going to have to break up concrete for about 30 feet. The kicker was, SoCo told us that we'd probably be down for 3 to 4 days without power. That means the dealership would not be able to operate for almost a week preparing for this. So Dan Langley and I were standing out in the parking lot, and I said, what's the power up above here? He said, well, that's 7,000 volts. I said, why can't we just pull it off the pole instead of having to do it up at the building? We'll build an island out here and put a new service in. Oh, SoCo won't do that. So, well, let's ask. So we got the SoCo construction guy out there, and his first response was, I doubt that we can get that through, but I'll ask. About a month later, they called back and said, your project's been approved. We're going to put a new service in, put a new pole in. So we have a high tension, but just below the high tension pole that's behind the store, they put a new pole in, 3 transformers, 483 phase down the pole into the power panels. We have more power at our charging island than we have in the entire building.
I bet.
With everything, I have the ability to add 2 more DC fast chargers with 2 plugs each. I can add 3 more level 2 chargers, and I can charge 4 vehicles on NEMA 1450 plugs. I could charge 15 vehicles out there at one time.
Wow.
With all the equipment. It's going to be a while before we put all the equipment in, but we figured if we were
you're prepared, you're ready.
The other thing with having it up at the building, we would have had 3 spots that we could charge, and if one of those spots was open, somebody pulls into the parking lot, oh, there's an open spot, I'll just park right there, then your charger's blocked.
Right.
Putting it out in the parking lot, we've got, right now, we can pull easily 5 vehicles around there and charge without.
Yeah, Reese and I were counting that night. We got out and was counting all the stations you had and everything. So that
it just seemed to work.
It does. I mean,
yeah.
that's a really nice station that you have there, and it does take debit cards. So if somebody's like, oh, my app isn't working, my cell phone coverage is not the best right here, they can pay with their debit credit card.
That's why we elected to go with that type of credit card reader. I took a Bolt to Champaign and tried to charge a DC fast charger, and I didn't have the app. So I was trying to download the app, and I didn't have a good cell connection, so I could not charge at that station. So I decided I wanted it to be more like a gas station. You just pull up, we'll take Apple Pay, we'll take a debit card, we'll take a credit card. You can put it in, you can tap it, you can swipe it. Wanted it to be more like just a regular gas station.
So definitely not like the 1960s, 70s. They come out and,
No.
wash your window and do all of that.
No,
anyway,
it's
but-
pretty much self-service.
Right, no. But at least you do have that backup there, the debit card, credit card, whatever, so in case you can't get your app to go.
Yep.
No, that's wonderful.
Now, the level 2 charger, you do have to, you scan a QR code, and then you have to download an app to get to that. But most people that are coming off the interstate go right to the DC fast charger because they want to have the faster charge than the level 2.
Neat. Well, guys, I appreciate both of you coming here, and like I said, thank goodness the Lord, weather willing, we were able to be on, and I'm glad you're feeling better. So,
Yeah,
thank
much
you.
better than last month, that's for sure. If anybody has any questions about EVs, you're welcome to call me at the dealership, 217-735-4444.
Yes, thank you for everything that you do for our community. I mean, and to Eaton too. I mean, that's great that you got, parts from, right here in Logan County, made by people from Logan County.
I'm not sure if I mentioned this. I know I mentioned that the level 2 chargers that we have all came from Eaton, and the level 2 charger that's inside our service write-up area was made right at the Lincoln plant. We got to see the actual line and talk to the people that made the charger.
Yeah,
Makes me
that's
feel
neat.
pretty good.
That does. That's awesome. Patrick, thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you all for tuning in to Viewpoint here on 96.3. The Lord, weather willing, we'll be back next week.
This live video stream is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.